After arriving on Dragonair to Hanoi, our new friends, San and Mr. Bing, picked us up and started driving us out of the city. We stopped at the first of many places where people cooked for us in a makeshift restaurant, which is actually their house. As good as the food was, the accommodations were lacking.
We drove through the countryside for several hours and checked into their version of a resort outside a town called Ha Giang. No one spoke a word of English there.
Đêm nay lặng lẽ sương mù về giăng trên mảnh tình quê, có ai để buồn chất chứa sân khê, có nhịp đàn lưu.
The next day, after paying off the police to let us go on, we got high up in the mountains where buffalo walk freely down the middle of the street, and their owners sit by the road and just watch them eat. They loved seeing a white person and really loved seeing themselves in the camera. Everywhere on the road, there were very few cars, but lots of tribespeople making their daily walk from the hills to the fields below.
We continued driving to the little town of Yen Min. More people walking the streets with their buffalo. Then we stopped in another person's kitchen, which was also a restaurant, and they cooked for us. Then they had tea and a smoke with us, which is customary after every single meal. Many houses look like this, but if you have money and you want to build, they can often look like this. Only 4 meters wide is allowed and as tall as you want, with animals living on the first floor.
We stopped in the little town of Dong Van to buy Deb's Vietnamese hat, and at the old King's Palace, where we were interviewed by a local TV station. We continued to be a bit of a novelty. Next was one of the highlights of the trip, the village of Mio Bac, about 18 hours drive from Hanoi. It was like going back 200 years in time.
Here, the tribespeople walk all night long from their mountain huts to get to the Sunday market to socialize, buy, and sell. There were no tourists or souvenirs here. This was all about buying and selling animals and vegetables.
Về xóa nỗi đơn côi, chúng mình lại thao thức bao niềm đêm nay lặng lẽ sương mù về giăng trên mảnh tình quê, có ai để buồn chất chứa sân khê, có nhịp đàn lưu luyến trên đường. Mai anh rời bước quê nhà hành trang mang nặng niềm thương, những khi mình cùng thức trắng đêm.
Leaving the market, we saw big live pigs strapped to bikes and baby pigs, ducks, and chickens stuffed in sacks for easy carrying. San had us try some local fried rice with onion and local coffee. Then we checked out of their version of a hotel, which made that bamboo bed look good.
Còn những nhánh sâu xa dần thoáng buồn, đi đời còn những bước chân miệt mài ngó.
Để rồi mình ta âm thầm từng chiều vang, nghe tim ai mơ màng chuyện.
We headed back to Ha Giang, where luckily we didn't need a curbside dentist.
From there we stopped in yet another remote village. Sometimes our guide knew people, sometimes not. It didn't matter. The people always seemed happy to see us. We really were welcome everywhere.
We were invited inside this family's house and were fascinated by the lack of furniture and the indoor burning fire. The homeowner was literally forcing us to drink rice wine, and I poured it down the cracks in his floor onto his animals underneath.
Trần ai gội niềm cay đắng, những suy tư in đậm đường khăn, biết còn ai đâu để vui khi trót xa vững lầy nhân thế, có ưu tư buồn phiền lên xa môi.
Then we drove on, making stops along the way to try the local foods, including one village where we actually called ahead for a reservation. This is lunch. Having some pumpkin. Honey, what's for lunch?
What?
What's for lunch?
Không phải lúc đầu đã cắt
I
tay
don't
thôi.
know. Pumpkin something. Why?
What happens if you cancel a reservation at this place?
You made a reservation for a party of 4.
You have to call ahead here in order to get a reservation.
We called ahead a while ago.
On our way to the village.
Yeah.
Because it's the only restaurant. Well, clearly it's pretty crowded. Oh, what if you want to go to sleep after lunch? Let's go see. You want to go to sleep after lunch? You go to sleep here. And if it rains, you have an umbrella. When we arrived at Pan Ho, we accessed our bungalow by a swinging bridge. Hello.
As we walked through the nearby village, they were milking a snake for blood.
Vãi lồn như thằng Tây nó hiểu đấy, vãi lồn nó là cái gì?
And then do they eat the snake too?
They eat all, even the skin.
Everything?
They have a fish down here. Hey, we move here. Look at that. The fish.
Oh, yellow fan. We continued on through the village and met more local people and visited their tea factory.
Then Jeff had a traditional herbal bath. The next morning we hiked through the rice terraces. In the middle of the rice paddies, we stopped at a stranger's house for tea.
We continued hiking through the fields and saw the school children going home for lunch. The village kids walk incredible distances to get to school.
Walking through the rice terraces was so different than seeing them from the road.
The next day we stopped at the border bridge between Vietnam and China, where all day long you see Vietnamese people bringing products over from China for sale in their own country.
Finally, we reached the Vietnamese vacation town of Sapa, considered remote by most Western tourists, but it was a metropolis compared to where we've been.
Our hotel was definitely the most modern yet. The cafes seemed to be made for little people, and the pharmacies were bags of herbs. Tribespeople were accustomed to tourists and tried to sell us their crafts.
Our guide San invited us over to his house for dinner, and his wife Mai cooked up a feast. We even got to meet San's 98-year-old grandma.
Alright, is it time?
Ah, okay.
Their two daughters were adorable, and Dad showed them how to paint with the watercolor set we brought them.
We had a great few days biking and hiking through the countryside around Sapa.
And I have to speculate that God Himself did make us into corresponding shapes like puzzle pieces from the clay. And true, it may seem like a stretch, but it's thoughts like this that
We continued being invited into villagers' homes and offered their rice wine, complete with snakes for flavor.
I am missing you to death when you
Even in the more remote locations, there was usually TV and, surprisingly, sometimes a computer.
and when you scan the radio. Oh, I hope this song will guide you home. They will see us waving from such great heights. Come down now, they'll say. But everything looks perfect.
We had a lot of fun giving the village children toys since they didn't seem to have any at all.
Come down now, but we'll stay. I tried my best to leave this all on your machine, but the persistent beat it sounded thin upon listening, and that frankly will not fly. You will hear the shrillest highs and lowest.
Okay, today we're going to show you the rice making process.
If they put in here, they break it. Or the half they separate it. Half of the rice. So the rice is the white one. The rice is white one. Here. For eat it. We eat the rice like that.
Come down now, they'll say.
We never knew what we'd find on our journey. These guys were actually making knives in their driveway.
Far away. Come down now,
hard 10 days in the mountains, villages, and rice paddy fields came to an end, and we boarded an overnight train to Hanoi to meet up with Mr. Chad. Yeah, now you're the fan favorite.
10,000.
Max. That's all.
10,000.
That's all. Or give her the back. We took in the sights of Hanoi, including the infamous prison called the Hanoi Hilton. Chad slept through the famous water puppet show.
Then we were off to Halong Bay on our own mini cruise ship.
Never seen it rain like this in the 10 years I've been living here. I haven't tasted salt on my skin since, well, I don't know. 'Cause here's not like the once there. The road map in my rear view, the back home, the down.
Then it was time for Chody to go back to Taiwan.
We flew to Laos, where we had hoped to spend 5 days.
I take a little powder, take a little salt, put it in my shotgun, and I go walking out.
After only one day, somebody got appendicitis and we needed to be air evacuated to Bangkok.
Looking low, gonna scare you up and shoot you. Mr. Charlie told me so.
Soon Jeff was back to his old self and anxious to come home.
Won't even take your life, won't even take a limb. Just unload my shotgun, take a little skill. Chuba, 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 chuba. Bully, 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 bully. Looking high, looking high. Looking low, looking low. Gonna scare you up and shoot you. Mr. Charlie told me so. $1, take a